The Titanfall community at large is in absolute chaos right now. A few days ago, early August, a document was published by the administration from SaveTitanfall.com, which outlined what appears to be a troubling pattern of behavior from their ex-partner organization, Remnant Fleet. For those that don't have any backstory right now, or come to this without any context whatsoever, here is just a really quick lightning-fast recap. An infamous hacker known as John Yu has been terrorizing the Titanfall franchise for years. This hacker has been speculated on, imitated, blamed, hated, and even glorified by some for his dedicated destruction of the franchise. I have other videos about it up on the channel. I guess I'll make a playlist now since there are quite a few of them. More recently, this internal conflict has bubbled over and started to affect Apex Legends as well. It's a long story, and probably best to watch my previous video on the subject first before watching this one, but again, TLDR, the administration of SaveTitanfall.com published a 40-page PDF document outlining screenshots and conversations by 4 users, Redshield, P0358, Dogecore, and Mr. Stake, that painted a picture of organized hacking, deception, and manipulation. That document, and my coverage of it subsequently, was catapulted into mainstream gaming press articles shared across Reddit and proliferated all over social media because by design it tore down the reputation of what had become one of the biggest Titanfall Discord servers in existence, Remnant Fleet. It outed the hackers behind a high-profile 4th of July Apex Legends incident where the servers were taken down and a message linking to SaveTitanfall.com was posted, and it reframed the community's perception, by and large, of someone who up till that point had been kind of a hero, viewed by many as the potential savior of the franchise, turning him into a manipulative pariah who very well might have orchestrated some or all of the recent hardship. Today, though, is part 2, because today I want to tell a story that comes as the flip side of the coin, if you will, since, as we all know, there is always more and there is always another point of view to consider. Foundation. The document alleges that Redshield knew about the Apex Legends hack perpetrated by people in his server, protected and lied for those perpetrators, and even deceived gaming media to that end. The document alleges that P0358 masterminded a series of destructive events for the Titanfall franchise to ultimately benefit a pet project of his called Titanfall Online, and the document also alleges that 2 users, Dogecore and Mr. Stake, perpetrated the Apex Legends hack while impersonating the SaveTitanfall.com administration. Here's what is immutably true. Dogecore and Mr. Stake were behind the hack of Apex Legends and were responsible for the link to SaveTitanfall.com being posted while Apex Legends was knocked offline on July 4th of 2021. They planned some of this, a large portion was planned off-server, in the Remnant Fleet Discord hidden channels, which created a serious problem with culpability when Remnant Fleet denied over and over and over again that they had absolutely no affiliation or knowledge of who the hackers were. This was said, announced, and propagated by P0358, an active administrator at the time, and is verifiably untrue as per my own conversations with him directly. Redshield, the owner of the Remnant Fleet Discord, also made this claim, but having spoken with all parties involved on more than one occasion, I can confirm that unless multiple people are lying about his involvement, and unless the evidence I've seen was photoshopped outright, which I do not believe it was, he was not aware of these plans being made. He was not aware that Mr. Stake and Dogecore had executed the attack on Apex Legends, and when claiming ignorance of these events, as well as denying any server involvement, he was telling what he believed to be the sincere truth at the time. Now, none of this changes what I would personally view to be suspect and improper handling of sensitive events, because in his pursuit of protecting Titanfall and raising awareness, he was still holding certain information close to the chest, which does not mesh with his statements on wanting to raise such awareness. But after extensive conversations with many of the people involved, I am not willing to label his actions as malicious, and would instead gravitate towards a kind of distracted negligence, even though the word negligence is still probably a little too severe. The hack was planned in his server to some extent. Most of the key indications of that popped up in administration channels, so even when acknowledging the fact that the server itself is enormous and most anyone would be incapable of following everything said there, I was given total access, by the way, to the server, and I can personally attest to this. There is still some degree of responsibility here. Also, having discussed with another YouTuber likely to cover the situation, Jerdude, that's his name, I find it odd that Redshield would offer both of us access to the server for the purposes of auditing communications, but would not give us complete access till later, citing our own lack of asking for it as the reason. It's pretty self-evident when asking for access at all in this type of situation that we mean total access. Still, having reviewed the audit logs, there is basically no suspect deletion of messages or evidence after the report went live, the huge 40-page document. The server was not tampered with, and this largely corroborates what Redshield claims initially, painting him as less of a villain manipulating the community for the destruction of a franchise, and more of a detached or disengaged leader, if you will, who had some loose cannons in the group. Those are his words, paraphrased, as per another conversation with Gerdude, who recorded an interview with Red Shield, and I'm sure that'll be up on his channel. I'll link it down below if you want to watch it, but that's a separate thing. However, this leads us to a sort of nebulous situation where on July 4th, 2 messages from Dogecore were deleted by P0358. That was brought to my attention by Gerdude, who also reviewed the audit logs. This happened right at the same time as the Save Titanfall Apex Legends hack. For those that don't remember or don't know, Dogecore, one of the hackers behind this attack, had posted less than 24 hours before it saying, "Are you ready for Operation SaveTitanfall.com?" This was on the 3rd, which seems to indicate preparation, at least in some capacity, for what is now known factually as an attack they carried out. What messages were deleted? What did they say? I really don't know. P0358 claims to not remember, and I don't know if I believe that. I think I do. And that's basically that, right? Like, there's nothing else to do because I could not find any indication whatsoever of the content for those deletions. Now to address concern that P0358 was, is, or has been pretending to be the infamous hacker known as John Yu. This is, by any metric I can gather now, having spoken to everyone involved multiple times practically, it is categorically false. P0358 has known John Yu and talked to him on occasion for almost 5 years. There is a verifiable pattern where when P0358 learns or reverse engineers some sort of exploit, which he does quite frequently, John Yu then chases it down or attempts to replicate that, leading me to a sort of logical question about why on earth someone who says they care this deeply for the game would exacerbate a meticulous hacker's obsession over and over for years. But clarifying what is and is not true, P0358 is not the John Yu figure responsible for laying waste to the original Titanfall game. Now, and this is a bit of a pivot, but bear with me, now we have to discuss the document itself, because there is an issue of hypocrisy and transparency that needs to be addressed. And as far as I know, again, having talked with all parties involved, it either will be or already has been addressed by the time this video comes out for some of them. The document was authored primarily by 3 people, with a 4th person listed at the last minute, but that's not as relevant. Those people are Discord users going by the names Cool Cryptid, Wanty, and Direction. They listed their names right on the document itself. I'm not outing anyone against their will here. One of those users, Wanty, was primarily responsible for gathering the screenshot evidence largely used against Red Shield, Mr. Stake, Dogecore, and P0358, as well as the Remnant Fleet Discord at large. He had permissions on the server and was able to see chat logs that others could not. Keep in mind, this document contains a heavy focus on the ethical quagmire of hacking a different game or creating bigger problems that stop players from being able to access what they paid for in order to raise awareness and fix a different or separate issue. The document has a multitude of material and separate points, but a central theme here was to connect Remnant Fleet to the Apex Legends attack and hackers, and the effects of this, and the strongly implied position after all of this, is that Remnant Fleet suffers a massive reputation hit because this immoral or unethical and unacceptable thing or attack came from their server. Well, this is where it gets a lot more murky, because Wanty in January of 2021 said the following in response to a screenshot showing 0 players online for Titanfall. I was able to get my hands on the full context of this here, so screenshots from before, during, and after. Contextually, I know it was not being manipulated. Quote, "Wouldn't it be nice if he can do that on Xbox as well? Maybe Microsoft would care more than EA and Respawn." End quote. PO responds, P0358 responds, "Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't." Wanty continues, "Seems to be worth giving a shot. Keep in mind, this is a hypothetical of damaging a game on a separate platform and harming another community to force Respawn to fix an entirely separate problem. That is exactly what the Apex Legends hack of July 4th was and was designed to do." Continuing, P0358 states, in response to the sentence, "giving it a shot," "There's no coming back once he knows how to do that," end quote. To which Wanty responds, "I know." Further saying down the log, quote, "Well, EA, Microsoft, and Steam having their name taken down in the mud in a sweet series of articles that no one gives a shit would be enough, I guess. Maybe leading to a lawsuit about them not giving a shit and leaving the game available on their stores," end quote. This is an almost perfectly similar tactic and sentiment when compared to the Apex Legends attack. It didn't actually happen, per se, but this is one of the authors serving as an architect behind the systematic dismantling of other community member reputations based on similar sentiment, which was ultimately translated by 2 of those people into action. Furthermore, in separate conversation logs I was given, Wanty says the following, referring to the supposed Jean Yu at the time. Quote, "I wish he had the balls to play big with Titanfall 2 and Apex, as that would improve things as Respawn still gives a shit about Apex." End quote. This, again, is an author behind the 40-page expose condemning community members for targeting Apex Legends as an attempt at fixing the other Titanfall games. And in March of 2021, he was expressing open desire for that very same thing to happen. In response to one of the now confirmed perpetrators of the Apex attack saying, "I know how to go big," right? He's as a hint kind of at some larger looming exploit or vulnerability. Wanty responds, quote, "Then go big. Respawn can only fix this, and they don't want to. EA will make sure of that. That's how security improves over time," end quote. Further down, quote again, "I don't really see an alternative for Titanfall 1 either, but to take down console players as well. That's where you have Microsoft saying, 'Yo, fix your shit, Respawn,' or a big amount of angry console players," end quote. This completely contradicts the sentiment and moral high ground claimed by the document published recently, and calls into question whether or not there is some sort of ulterior motive here. I had a lengthy conversation with Wanty regarding this exact situation, and this exact series of messages as well, to which he made it abundantly clear that the other authors had no idea about these logs. He said he stands by the meat and bones of the document, but when confronted directly with this message, his response, it gets confusing for me. First, he said, "I knew P0358 had an exploit to play on console servers quite some time ago. As far as I know, he was distributing some drivers to allow some players to play on console servers from PC on Titanfall 2. I wanted to talk more about it, but I couldn't get him to talk further," end quote. Except I chalked that up to maybe a simple misunderstanding because it had nothing to do with what I was asking. But then, when clarified with the actual screenshot that I sent him, like, "Here, look, you said this," another of the authors listed on the document itself immediately left the conversation. Having talked further with her, she was not aware of any of this, it seems, and did not want to be associated since this appears to be identical goals and desires compared to what the document itself was condemning. And Wanty responded with, quote, "I was suspicious of him and was trying to pressure him," end quote. I've since clarified with Wanty that he was saying he was suspicious of P0358 and his relationship to John Yu, the infamous hacker, but this occurred in January of 2021, which is before the two groups partnered up. They actually partnered up to work on SaveTitanfall.com. None of this tracks for me. He later says, quote, "I was keeping tabs on him, trying to know if John Yu would start doing that on console servers, trying to know if conversations with P0358 would link with John Yu's activity," end quote. But again, what we can clearly see in the screenshots was an open call for P0358 to disclose that information to John Yu, or otherwise facilitate the destruction of the game on the console platform in order to force the hand of Microsoft or even Sony. Even if the goal was to see if there was communication between P0358 and John Yu, he had just called for that to happen. So if it did, how would that serve as actionable proof of anything? Within an hour, I had further messages where other members of this core author group were saying things like, "I guess I didn't do enough research myself." And keep in mind, this is one of the central architects of the massive investigation, referencing another of the central architects who is responsible for gathering the lion's share of all the Discord evidence. It doesn't look good, and I'm not comfortable assigning the label of intentional malice or manipulation, but this is forcing me to start asking some serious questions about the motive behind this entire series of events, and especially that document. I have been given a draft copy right now of a response document from the accused parties, some of them coordinating, I believe, working together. This is over 140 pages long. I will not be showing it or the things from it because that's not my story to tell right now, and they have their own words, but there is a lot here, and this situation is far from over. It'll probably be out soon. I'm not sure where you'll be able to get it, but I'll keep everyone posted with maybe like a community post on the channel or something when it goes live. Remember, the document itself, the initial document, 40 pages long, was heavily predicated on condemning the Apex Legends attack, the attackers, and anyone who knew, while also containing an angle against doxing and harassment as a tactic in the fight. However, in another screenshot I was given, Wanty states explicitly, quote, "Legal action, anyone living in the same state as him, Georgia if I remember." It's not Georgia. The current suspected identity of John Yu is a resident elsewhere. And lastly, quote, "Will we hunt down John Yu as 4chan hunted Shia," end quote. This is quite possibly just humor, it really could be, and references a series of trolling escapades against a livestream thing that Shia LaBeouf did for political reasons, I think. Go watch Internet Historian's series on the topic called The Triggering of Shia LaBeouf or something like that. It's incredibly funny and entertaining, but that's a tangent. But back on track here, there have been innocent people accused of being John Yu in the past who were doxxed and harassed, which is one of the reasons I never acted on what I was given regarding the current supposed identity of John Yu. I am not capable of deciding true intent here. It just makes certain foundational points in the document much harder for me to take at face value. To summarize, there was immediate confusion and inconsistency when I brought forward some of this evidence to the original authors of the document. I've done extensive voice calls with other YouTubers, people involved, people not involved, people who probably lied to me for the fun of it even, and so much more, so all of this is based on that. Mr. Stake and Dogecore absolutely did attack Apex Legends with a SaveTitanfall.com message. P0358 learned of this directly as it was happening, it seems, but chose to maintain his relationship with them while simultaneously claiming no knowledge of the events on their official server. This led to an easy target since those statements were false. Red Shield largely had no idea these events were taking place at all. There was an element of planning, though not the majority, which took place on his server, and creates at least a modicum of responsibility here, but it was not coordinated between all parties as per my more in-depth findings. In the aftermath, messages were not purged or deleted. Myself and Jerdude were given access, and there were certain contradictions between statements and inconsistencies, etc., but nothing I would proclaim as a smoking gun or an actionable error. The original architects of the document itself had one member that seemingly has the same perspective, sentiment, and desires as the parties who were accused. He even called for some of this stuff to happen outright. And the responses given when confronted by that were extremely confusing to me. But I do not believe that the others had any idea about his prior messages, given the fact that the user in those messages was the one gathering all of the evidence. In a conversation with Mr. Stake, the architect of the Apex Legends hack, he stated that he has knocked streamers and players offline in Titanfall 2. That is something he has done. However, this was an isolated incident, or so he says, during one day. He did this, quote, for fun, end quote. But when cross-referencing this with other statements I received, like stuff that I got from other people and screenshots from the server and my own logs that I was able to dig through, there is no current reason for me to believe that this is anything but true. I do believe that he's being sincere when he says this. On a personal level, I feel slightly used, I guess. I wouldn't say I was tricked necessarily, but I amplified a message that was catapulted to mainstream gaming news outlets without digging quite deep enough in the moment. In my defense, the entire community is like an anime plot twist roller coaster, but still, it deserved another video with a deeper evaluation, to say the very least. All parties accused adamantly deny that any of this was to resurrect Titanfall Online. They either have already released or are planning to release their own statements very soon, and once that happens, there may be a lot more to this story. As it stands, a lot of what the document contained was true, but some of it clearly wasn't. Everyone should make their own decision on what to think here, and there is a whole lot more to the story, some of which I obviously haven't even found yet, so rest assured, I'm still digging. That's it. If you want to support, there are links down below, primarily Odyssey, which is a YouTube platform alternative, also Locals, $5 a month for completely ad-free versions of all the content, also the audio podcast format, another gaming YouTuber to check out, merch, social media, etc., but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.